Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So today's video is a little different. You see this football team here, or soccer team? Well, they are an all-transgender soccer team. Every player on the team is transgender, and they are all actually females. These are women who identify as men. And this is a team in Spain, and it's been reported that they have made history as the first all-transgender team to play in a men's division, in a men's league. Now, in terms of presenting their cause, presenting their community, and as part of the transgender community, yeah, they've made waves. They've certainly made waves. But it doesn't appear that they've made waves in the world of soccer. I don't think they're going to be winning any trophies anytime soon. I don't think the men particularly see them as a threat, like it would be if they were an all-transgender team that was full of males. Obviously, that would be a huge threat to women's soccer. We've seen what's going on in Australia. A team of 11 with 5 transgender players. They're dominating. They're completely, in many people's opinions, destroying women's soccer, destroying the integrity of women's soccer and using their advantage to continue to go undefeated. I don't think it's quite the same when female athletes want to enter into a men's division, wants to play in a men's category. Most of the time, they don't get the opportunity because in order to play in certain divisions at a certain level, you have to qualify. You have to qualify, perform at a certain level. But maybe at a more amateur level, there's a possibility. But what I think this story highlights is nobody seems to care about the female athletes who identify as men. Some may refer to them as trans men, okay? No one seems to care about their inclusion. They only care about the inclusion of trans-identified men who want to enter into women's competitions. That's the only sort of inclusion they seem to care about. Where really, the ones who are going to be excluded the most are the female athletes. There are Olympians who have to identify as non-binary in order to compete at the Olympics, but still keep some sort of transgender status. We've seen a trans man playing in soccer, in women's soccer at world-class level. And that person identified as non-binary. But really the person wanted to be recognized as a man. But obviously there was no way that female athlete was going to qualify to compete in men's soccer, to compete, at the World Cup, in the men's team. Absolutely no way. If that was possible, that's exactly what that person would have done. Clearly it's not possible because men and women are different. The male body and the female body are completely different. Same thing with the transgender person in the Olympics. The female athlete who was labeled non-binary, but really wanted to identify as a man, but couldn't compete against other men. So that transgender athlete remained in the women's category, remained competing against females, but wanted some recognition as a transgender person, okay? Now the issue with women who want to identify as men, but still want to participate in sports, they can't even participate in the category that aligns with their biological sex if they're on testosterone. So those 2 female athletes, they decided to forgo testosterone so they could compete in sports. And that's the choice they have to make. If you want to compete in the women's category, you can't be doping. That's exactly what that is. Obviously, you can't be on testosterone. And unfortunately, taking testosterone doesn't give you the same level of strength and power and speed as a male athlete, as a natural born male athlete. So yeah, they're kind of in limbo, the female athletes. All the TRAs, they're quiet when it comes to female athletes. So let's take a look at this story. A football team of transgender men has debuted in a regional league in Spain, overcoming administrative challenges and prejudice to become the first all-trans squad to achieve federated status in Europe. Okay, that's quite an achievement. So the team was started by Hugo Martinez, who was forced to leave the women's football team due to prejudice and abuse. So Hugo was claiming that the women's football team wasn't welcoming and basically was prejudiced once transitioning began. Now again, if you're in a women's football team, an all-female football team, and you start taking testosterone, women are going to have an issue with that, just like they would have an issue with somebody who is male playing on their team. You don't get to break the rules and be allowed to cheat and even be called a hero for cheating just because you identify as trans. I'm sorry. That's what we're seeing at the moment. So I don't know if that was the case. Maybe the person wasn't on testosterone and it made the women uncomfortable for whatever reason. It could have been that. But I'm inclined to believe that if you claim to be transitioning, part of that involves taking testosterone. And looking at this picture, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, admittedly. It really is. So I'm inclined to believe that they're on testosterone. So yeah, that wouldn't work on a women's team. And that's not prejudice. Just like any woman could not be on a team, could not be competing and doping. That is against the rules. So Martinez said, I was a boy playing in the girls' team, but without a changed ID. I wasn't allowed to play with boys. So Martinez claims to have suffered from threats and insults, being mocked by players, coaches and spectators, probably due to a change in appearance. So people didn't receive it very well. That's what it sounds like to me. So Martinez then sought other transgender men who wanted to play in a safe and inclusive environment and set up the club. So various players on the team said that they were hesitant to play in a women's team, in an all-female team, because of threats and, people not being inclusive, people not being welcoming. This is what they're claiming. Fenix is a team of trans boys created entirely by trans boys, but I think it's more than that. A family, a safe space where you can be free to express yourself however you want and how you really feel.
Players say the journey here hasn't been easy. 24-year-old Hugo Martinez founded the team. He says he faced abuse when he began transitioning and was forced to leave the women's team he played on.
I was a boy playing in the girls' team, but without a changed ID. Then, I couldn't play even with the boys, and the people on the stands, the parents, the other players, the other coaches, well, they said things that they didn't have to say. Insults, threats.
The team made its debut in the 5th tier in Spain's northwestern region of Catalonia in September, after being incorporated into a local club in a Barcelona suburb. 19-year-old Luke Ibanez is the team's captain. Ibanez jumped at the opportunity to play for an all-trans side when team founder Martinez told him about the idea.
We were afraid of playing with cis men. We thought we would not fit, or that it would be too violent. Many things passed through our minds. We did not know what to do to continue playing soccer.
La ley trans es ley.
Spain passed a pioneering transgender rights bill last year that is meant to make changing a person's legal gender identity easier.
So with females, they were concerned about playing with men. They were concerned about playing with male footballers. They were worried about violence. They were worried about perhaps them being too aggressive and them not being well received. And that's an understandable concern. Now, in terms of women participating in men's sports, that's up to men to say how they feel about that. That's up to men to voice their concerns if they indeed are concerned about it. Now, this is Spain. So, I don't know how things work there in terms of the rules. Spain is kind of, from what I've seen, traveling to Spain a couple of times, is live and let live. They're claiming that they were concerned anyway, that it wouldn't work, being mixed in with men. Now, I would think the main concern would be having somebody who doesn't perform as well as the other men. Is that going to affect your team? Is that going to be in the best interest of your team's success to have a female player? Objectively speaking, I would say it wouldn't. But a team that is all transgender, they're all in the same boat. They're all, the same identity. They're all female. Now, one debate I was listening to, someone made a really good point. I believe it was Zubi. He said that there really is no such thing as men's sports, men's categories. It's not really to keep women out of men's sports, it's to keep men out of women's sports. It's to separate the women from the men so that women can have their own sports. That's why there's categories. It's not to include men.
I think this is where a lot of the backlash against the so-called trans community comes from, because we all agreed on that first point that this is pandering and this is companies trying to make money and so on. But when people start coming to arguments about biological males competing in female sports, and by the way, notice the conversation only happens in one direction, and There's a specific reason for that. Nobody is concerned about men's sports or boys' sports. And that is because we're biologically different. And I just think that this is the reason why this conversation has raged on for so long. It's these type of ridiculous, frankly, demands that affect women, affect half of the population, particularly those who play sports. And that's where people just get lost. And I think that's where a lot of the backlash or resentment actually is stemming from. I think in the West, most people at this point don't really care. Go ahead.
I'm gonna go. I'm the only trans person here. This isn't about sports. It's about a gateway for the right to begin banning trans people from access to certain programs.
I'm not right wing.
That's not true.
I'm not right wing. So how do you figure that?
No, it's
Well,
not.
you
It's not
certainly
a
have
left-right.
right-wing views on trans
It's not a
folks.
left-right.
I don't have
It's not
right-wing
a
views
left-
on
it's not a
trans
left-right
folks. I
issue.
just said to you,
Look, I've tried to explain this
hang on, I
before.
want trans people to have fairness and equality and the same human rights as everybody else.
And even
I just
if
don't want,
you
I just don't want trans
personally
people to
consider
erode.
yourself on the right,
I don't
it's
want
still a gateway into banning trans people.
No, I don't want
from
to ban
different
trans
facilities
people. I would
outside
like
of
trans
sports.
people to either compete against their own biological sex, which seems to me the easiest thing to do, or they compete in a new section altogether of trans athletes. What's wrong with that?
Yeah,
So a new separate but equal league is what you're saying.
Can I jump in here? The solution for this is very simple, and we've had the solution, as far as I know, for about a century. And this is simply to have an open sports league and a female-only sports league. A lot of what people call men's sports is not even explicitly men's sports. Anyone is allowed to participate, but because of the biological and physiological advantages men have, if you take the fastest, the strongest people in the world, the best endurance, they're all going to end up being men. That's how it's going to stack up, which is why if you want females to be able to participate in sports, you need to have a separate league because they can't compete in an
I
open
completely agree.
competition against men.
You know, that's just the reality. A lot of sports just started off being for men, like the Olympics. When they first started, it was just for men. But in 1900, they decided to open it up to women. And obviously, that didn't mean that women competed against men. It meant that they had their own categories. So if an all-transgender team, who are all female, technically, wants to play in the men's division, most people probably wouldn't care.
But intolerance persists. In 2023, Catalonia's Observatory Against LGBT Phobia noted 302 cases of discrimination or violence against LGBT people in the region, a record. A quarter of those cases targeted transgender victims. For its part, the Catalan FA said its men's leagues have been mixed for the past 2 seasons. That means players of any gender can play, regardless of their official identity. Players are not required to use their legal name either. That's not always the case in other regional FAs or sports. Phoenix lost its first game of the season, 19-0. But Captain Ibanez says the team's significance extends beyond the scoreboard.
That me to laugh. So, if you want to play in the men's division and be losing 19-0 and stress yourself out, that's your choice. This is an open division. Notice how they said the men's divisions are open. That's great. So if you're female and you want to play in the men's division, they allow it. It's fine. And if you want to go and compete against male footballers and be losing in double digits, that's your choice to do that. So all of them are transgender, and they all support one another on the team, and they want to play in the men's division. They're allowed to do that. Good for them. I personally wouldn't want to be playing against male footballers every week and getting destroyed. I wouldn't want that. And that's why, at least here in the US, we will find that a lot of female to male, transgender people end up getting excluded. And no one seems to care. They only care about the men who want to infringe upon women's sports. So that's where we're at. Another thing I want to address when it comes to trans men, females who identify as men. People love to use images like I've just shown you of this football team. And, people who are quite passing when it comes to looking like a man. People won't know for the most part, unless you tell them. And they say, well, what if this person comes into the women's bathroom? Huh? What would you say about that? As if that's some sort of gotcha, Like, look at this comment. Question. It already started off with attitude. If you saw these men walk into the women's restroom, what would your reaction be? It shows how absurd laws about using restrooms matching your birth gender is. There are many reasons people become trans and have been for generations. Why is it anyone's business but their own? Now, obviously, that's like a ridiculously oversimplistic way of looking at things. The reason why women object to men being in their bathrooms is because they're men. And you identifying as a woman doesn't change that. You are still male. And the fact is, like I've reiterated a million times, once you say that somebody who identifies as a woman can use the woman's bathroom, you have to allow all men to use the women's bathroom. You can't pick and choose the status of somebody's transition to determine if they're allowed to use the women's bathroom. A man can simply say he identifies as a woman, and that's it. So that means that any man can enter the women's bathroom. Some of them even changed their policy to say that, because there's no point even trying to narrow, the sort of man that's allowed in the bathroom. Some of them just say that men can go into the women's bathroom. And that's the reality. That puts women's safety at risk. Someone who's female, who happens to look like a man because that's how she presents herself, she identifies as a man. Okay. But that's not a safety issue, is it? It's not. That's not a safety issue. A safety issue is when a man who wants to have access to women, a predator who wants to have access to women, can now enter into the women's bathroom because of these silly policies that put women's safety in jeopardy. And that's what we've had. We've had examples of this where women have been assaulted by trans-identified males. That could have been prevented if there weren't policies allowing men to enter into women's bathrooms. So that argument is absolute nonsense. At the end of the day, all of this is just cosmetic. It really is. It's cosmetic. A woman who presents herself as male, she has gone through various procedures to make herself look that way. She has taken various medications to acquire more masculine features. That is all on a surface level. It's no different from a woman who just looks more masculine walking into the bathroom. It's no different. And that's been happening from the very beginning of time. So no one cares. Stop using silly arguments to justify putting women at risk, to justify putting the safety of women and girls at risk. So yeah, good luck to this team for their next match. Probably gonna need it. But, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.